Muslims have an image problem in the world, the causes. Professor Ahmet Oysal. Muslims are a major portion of the world population. They played an important role in history. Even though Islam sees the Christians and the Jews positively as the people of the book, their relations witnessed ups and downs throughout history. After the spread of Islam to the Christian territories, the Muslims respected the Christian faiths and coexisted with them peacefully for a long time. Despite the Crusaders, the Ottoman Empire maintained the peaceful tradition of coexistence. The relations became sour after the rise of the West at the expense of the Muslim world, affecting the image of Muslims negatively. As Maxim Rodinson showed in his book Europe and the Mystique of Islam, the image of Islam was not always bad in the West as it was good in different periods. Today the image of Muslims looks generally negative in the West, and it is reflected to the other parts of the world. The fact that most of the negativities are exaggerated and baseless does not change this fact. In this article, we will review its reasons for this problem in detail. After First and Second World Wars, the Western victors wrote a negative history for the Turks and Arabs and other parts of the world. Their narrative has been challenged from inside and outside, but it still persists today. The negative image of Muslims is related to some historical factors. After the Muslim conquests in Asia, North Africa and Andalusia, the Crusaders attacked the Muslims in the Levant during the early centuries. The Turkish expansion in Eastern Europe also created a fear of the Muslim Turks, summarized in the motto, "The Turks are coming." Additionally, the Western expansionism and colonialism occurred mostly at the expense of Muslims as they invaded many Muslim lands in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. The exploitation and suppression destroyed their economy and caused serious resentment and resistance against the Western powers. Today the global power struggle still continues in the Middle East at expense of their people with the blind support of the West for the Zionist state, while there is a huge lobby to defame the Arab and Muslims in this struggle. Israel has always tried to distort the Arab and Muslim image at international level. The Western interventions in Afghanistan, Iraq and other Muslim countries were justified by demonizing their people. This effort became very visible after the 9/11 attacks that were attributed to Osama bin Laden and some Arab youth. However, this event was not even sorted out in the US courts. Nevertheless, it created huge anti-Muslim sentiments in the West and around the world as Muslims began to be equated with terrorism. Radicalism and terrorist groups such as Al-Qaeda, ISIS and others also increased the negative perception of Muslims. The Muslims are also victims of these radical groups, but this does not change the fact that terrorists distort Muslim image around the world. We need to add that the Western media also strengthen this negative image by exaggerating and sometimes distorting the events related to the Muslims. This can be found in the news coverage or in Hollywood films. The ignorance about Islam around the world adds to the negative image. Major conflicts in the region produced millions of refugees, aggravating the hatred against Muslims that is also called Islamophobia. The influx of Muslim refugees from Syrians, Afghans and Africans made Muslim symbols more visible in the West, causing fears of social and cultural uneasiness in the West. Racism and ethnic fanaticism are not new in the West. Fascism and Nazism are the paramount examples of such radical views. Previously, those radical right parties were targeting other European nations, but recently they began to target the Muslim refugees or residents as a threat to their security and culture. Even some countries invest in promoting negative image about Muslims that are unfairly blamed for crimes, unemployment, and poverty. Unfortunately, the Muslim world lacks an international institution that can counter this trend, as the OIC is not very effective in this regard, reflecting the general situation of the Muslims. I will suggest some solutions to improve the image of the Muslims in the next article.